Hey everyone, Tony D with another hot take. This one is a little more nebulous because I honestly am not sure what's going on. Um, but I wanted to share with you some thoughts. So it seems like things are heating up with China. But here's the problem: there are certain forces within our own government that would love to see a war with China. Not necessarily a hot war. A hot war would be, well, that would be very bad. There would be nuclear weapons, and nobody wants that. Even the people who want the war. But what they do want is kind of a hot Cold War, sort of like we had with the Soviet Union, right? Where everybody's scared a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit, enough so you could funnel a ton of taxpayer money into making sure your military and your spy apparatus is aiming at China. Because one of the things that came out at the end of the Cold War, and you have to understand this from someone who lived that, was that towards the end of the Soviet era, you had the Berlin Wall falling down, and then the Soviet Union kind of falling apart. And during that time, or prior to that time, there were all kinds of think tanks in Washington, and their job was to analyze the Soviets and sort of predict what they're doing. Could they be plotting this or that? And every once in a while, they'd make these grand pronouncements about events that would happen in the world stage, and they would get all sorts of money from the United States government. And some of them were fronts for like the CIA and guys like that, and other ones were like involved with people who were in politics but weren't in power at the moment. So then they drop over onto the think tanks for a while until it was time to move back into government or to move into, say, the defense industry or something like that. So you always have these sort of figures whose names, if you follow politics, you sort of know, and they have certain views because their views comport with their think tanks, which are getting money to say and do certain things, right? So, for instance, if you are getting money in a think tank about the Soviet Union during the Cold War, are you going to say the Soviet Union's not a threat? Well, that seems to be counterproductive to your think tank, right? The think tank kind of needs the Soviet Union to be a threat, or why even have the think tank? If the Soviet Union's not a threat and it's falling apart from within, and you know that, and you can prove it, you're basically saying, well, let's disband the think tank. And nobody wants to do that. So there are all these kind of guys who do that. And then there's guys like Bill Kristol. Bill Kristol is the kind of guy who, come here, Joan, he supported the Iraq War, thought it was a great idea, supported it long after people were going, oh my God, what have we done? So, some of these guys are, I don't know if they're motivated by money so much as they're motivated by their own wacky ideology that the United States should just steamroll everybody and take over. But who knows? But that's going to be, one of the parameters going forward. You're really going to have to watch carefully in the next couple of weeks what they say about China and what they say about this virus. Because it's very odd to me that, and again, it's counterintuitive. My radar went off because you have all these governors who are still like, no, we can't open things. And let's be clear. Most of those governors don't care about their constituents. I don't believe for a second they do. Even Governor Phil, who I thought, I got fooled for a while again. He was saying all these nice things about people and mentioning them individually and how hard it must be on their families and all that. But here he is, and he's still locking people up, even though the science is now pointing in the opposite direction. It's pointing to, no, you got to let people out. No, the longer you keep in, the more you're going to reduce their immunity and possibly make it worse when you get the second wave. So, something to consider. But again, don't go too far off the rails. I mean, I just saw this interesting documentary that someone sent me the link, and it pretty much makes Dr. Fauci out to be kind of a monster. I don't know if it's true. I don't know if it's conspiracy nonsense, but you know, it didn't sound totally unfeasible because look, pharmaceuticals, they got a lot of money, millions, billions of dollars at stake if their treatment gets picked as the treatment, whether or not the treatment works at all. But the thing is, if it kind of works, then they're going to get their money and they could always ease into a better version of the treatment down the road, right? But if you've got, say, that malaria drug and zinc, then, which is very affordable, then maybe you don't need their super cool new drug. So I think we have to be very, very wary. And, when you see all this alternative information on the internet, you got to question the status quo. You always got to question it. Now, that doesn't believe you have to believe every conspiracy theory that comes down the pike. Certainly there's been, and there's going to be wacky conspiracy theories that the Chinese bioengineered this as a weapon to get us. Usually the truth is somewhere more of kind of like chaos. Like the Chinese accidentally exposed themselves to this, then realize it's running rampant and probably they can't stop it. So they F the other countries by saying, well, we don't want to get F'd. We don't want them to be able to seal off their countries when we couldn't, because otherwise we'll take the economic hit. Let's play games a little bit. Let's just drag our feet and make sure they get nice and infected before they come in, before we really come in and help them. So, but at the same time, you've got forces in our government saying, oh yeah, this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity to get back everything we used to have during the Soviet era. We can get back all our think tanks and all our money, all our military money. No one's going to want to cut the military budget if we're up against an enemy like China. They have nukes. They're a real superpower. They effed us. Let's get everybody mad at them so we can get them just enough war so we can get this money flowing back into our pockets again. Because at the end of the day, it all comes back to one thing: money, money, and money. So, anyhow, I don't have any answers in this video. Sorry, low battery. I'm just asking you to be a little bit wary. Oh, and one of the places I check on occasion, not all the time, but it seems pretty reliable, is called Zero Hedge. And they were ahead of the curve on the virus. So you might want to add that to your list of news sources. You're flying around the internet. It's, it's not, don't go down the rabbit hole, but, check in with it every once in a while.